Hello, everyone. Happy Monday to you. Welcome to our Q&A session with our president, Dr. Mark Walker. Dr. Walker, it's been 2 weeks since we were together, and we're back at it today. Welcome to our Q&A.
Well, thank you, and welcome to everybody that's watching right now. It has been 2 weeks, and 2 weeks ago today, we were talking about opening up. It was the final Q&A with the final details about how we were going to open, and now we've been open, I guess, officially for about 12 days, beginning August 12th with the beginning of move-in.
Yes, sir.
And since that time, we've moved students into dorms. We've had the new student orientation weekend activities. We've had live registration. We've had 3 days of classes. And man, we're excited about what's happening. We are off, I believe, to a fantastic start with all that's going on and with all the protocols and all the changes because of COVID-19. And I just want to say this, thank you. Students, thank you. You are doing awesome. You are exercising responsible citizenship. You are taking personal responsibility to wear masks. You are being patient and flexible, standing in the checkpoint lines, and it's making a difference. And I cannot say enough of how proud I am of how you're doing this. I know it's not easy. I know it's challenging, but you're meeting the challenge. And parents, you'd be proud of your kids. And we're off to a great start, but this is a marathon. It's not a sprint. Now, I don't know a ton about track, but what I do know a little bit about is if you're in a sprint, it's how you come out of the box. It's that start that really makes the difference quite often in terms of whether you're going to win or not. And I believe we have come out of the box very, very well, but it is a marathon, so keep it up. Keep up doing all the things we're asking you to do because it is making a difference. And we just want to say that up front. Thank you for all your hard work. Keep it going.
Yeah, and so we are open, but as Dr. Walker says, the goal is to stay open and finish this race strong. So thank you very much. Dr. Walker, we are getting students into classes. They're going into buildings. We're doing the temperature checks, and there's students working in the classrooms. How have we done in these first few days, and what are we doing, in fact, to serve our students well to make sure we stay open well?
Yeah, great question, Phil. A lot of hard work. Because of people, staff and faculty, administrators, students, we are able to staff a lot of things we wouldn't have to normally do because, again, of the guidelines and protocols that are in place. But we have about 270 people who are serving on checkpoint teams. And these are checkpoints at all of our different checkpoint temp check stations. We have about 13 of those stations across our campus. And on the average, what we have seen since classes have started, we are scanning at these different checkpoints over 3,400 people a day.
Excellent.
That's quite a few across these 13 stations. And we will not be able to do that without the work of these students and faculty and staff that are staffing these checkpoint stations. They're open from 7 a.m. to 6 p.m., so it takes a large workforce to do this. And what happens is every person has an app where they self-screen, if you will. They answer questions about different symptoms of COVID-19, and they go through this app. Once they go through that and they're good, it goes yellow. And then they have to go to one of our temp check stations and have their temperature checked. And if that's good, they get that scanned, it goes green. And then they're able to get into any building across this campus. So that's what I mean by we have on the average of over 3,400 people a day since we've started classes doing that. And it wouldn't have happened without these different workers taking up those positions. Along with that, Phil, what we've done in terms of class, we've gone hybrid, meaning all of our classrooms are equipped with Zoom capabilities, cameras and microphones that our information technical folks have done an amazing job out of Dr. Van Hook's area of equipping all of our classrooms with these capabilities. And so we got a few classes that are Zoom only, but vast majority are hybrid in that we have in person, sitting in the class, socially distanced, and then we have the Zoom capabilities, some that are watching Zoom. And they're all social distance, and we've got masks on and all those different things. But We have about 83 or 84 right now hybrid tech team members. These are students that are helping our faculty manage all this technology in the classroom. Some of us, like myself, are technologically challenged, and so we need extra help. And these students are making that happen. So again, the point of all that is a lot of people doing a lot of hard work, doing a lot of extra work to make sure we can have class in the way that we want to have class. And so we're very pleased with what's going on with that.
Excellent. So we're getting students to class, we're getting them in and out of buildings, we're getting them into the dining hall, we're eating and up and running for the semester. And Dr. Walker, what we've said from the beginning is there are things that are very important to us that we're going to continue to do, and chapel's one of them.
Yeah.
And while it's definitely a different experience, we have had chapel. We had our first chapel Thursday, and you spoke, and then we have a chapel scheduled for the rest of the semester. How are we doing in chapel, and what's our approach to chapel for the rest of the semester?
Yeah, we've said from day one, when we've begun to answer questions about how Lee is going to look come fall, chapel was always on the table. Always a requirement, but we've also said it's going to be different like everything else. And we had 68 different venues on our first day of chapel where students were gathering. The in-person live venue was the Con Center, and I think we had about 170 students in there. And then all across the campus in these different venues, these other 67 venues, I guess, we had students with chapel hosts. We have about 99 volunteers just doing chapel, serving as chapel hosts across the campus. And we have, along with the Con Center, 12 large venues where students gathered. And then we had 55 different classrooms where students were gathering, and that was all done virtual. Now, in those in-person places where it was virtual, they were still socially distanced and with masks on. Being a worship experience where there is singing, that contributes more to the passing of the germs, if you will. And so we had them sing with masks on. Kind of weird. And when I had my mask on singing, I could hear myself better, and I thought, oh, I'm not going to sing anymore. So that's a little weird. Yeah. But yeah, it was amazing. I think somewhere in the neighborhood of around 1,900 students or people in chapel throughout these venues. Now, it was challenging. It was different. But, you know, as you mentioned, I was in the Con Center, and you're wondering, how are the students going to be able to engage, you know, because they're so spread out. And I was more than proud. I was moved, Phil, to watch these students as worship was going on with masks on. They got, you know, people all spread out among them and engaged. I mean, lifting of hands, and you could see them leaning in, and it was very, very moving. And I felt like they're in the Con Center, and when I spoke, the students were very much involved. And we got those kind of reports from several of the different venues across the campus of how, even though virtual, even though we had glitches, even though we've learned some things since that first day, student engagement seemed to be quite good. And so we're very pleased with that. And we are making adjustments. We've learned, and so we'll be making adjustments all along the way. That's one of the reasons we've said from the get-go, flexibility is going to be very, very huge in terms of everybody's attitude. Now, with that said, we've had students who have felt the need that they need to be exempt from chapel. Right. And ever since we have put a chapel plan together, if you go to the reopen guide that we put out a couple of weeks ago about all the details of how we're opening up campus, and then in the chapel plan that Dr. Hayes and his team put out on the website about how chapel was going to go, it makes reference in there that students can file for chapel exemption to go virtual only, meaning they don't have to be in our in-person venues. And before I continue that, let me say this. Dr. Hayes in his sector and Pastor Rob Foltz, our campus pastor and the campus ministries sector, I'm telling you, they have done a tremendous job. And again, to all our faculty and staff who have been being hosts in these venues, moms and dads, man, I hope you're hearing what I'm saying here. We love your students so much. People are going way outside of what they normally have to do to make it happen. And students, I hope you're appreciating that as well. But in that guide, it has said from the get-go, hey, if you feel like you need to do virtual only, you can file for an exemption. Now, we are following the Tennessee Health Department guide in terms of how to social distance in a large gathering worship setting. And so that's how we have spaced out all of these venues. But even with that, we know that some students may have some physical preconditions that even being in the socially distanced environment, they just feel like they don't need to be exposed. And then some students are just uncomfortable, period. Right. And we don't want to impose that on anyone. So from day one, we've said, hey, you can submit an exemption to be out of chapel in person. It's still required, and you do it virtually, during chapel, at the time of chapel. And there's a way we can take the attendance through the technology. And if if you feel like you need to file that exemption, you can do so contacting, I think there's going to be a email on the screen that you can contact and get information about how you can file for exemption. But chapel's going to go on, right, and because we believe it's such a vital part of the spiritual development of our students.
Excellent. And as Dr. Walker said, we're working through those challenges that are coming up and making those adjustments. And I know the students that have expressed concern are grateful for that. Dr. Walker, thank you very much. So we're getting to class, we're going to chapel, we're eating, and even in all the precautions that we're taking, Dr. Walker, there are going to be cases on campus. And so talk about how are we approaching this? What are we seeing on campus right now? And how is the administration, in particular you, leading us through this, the particular cases that we're having regarding COVID?
Yeah, I mean, we knew, everybody knew there were going to be cases on campus, and we've certainly had cases. But through the protocols that we put in place, what I described about the app, what I described about the temp checks, we're able to catch these cases, and we are following the CDC and Tennessee Health Department guidelines on dealing with cases. And these students are being quarantined, but we're taking good care of them. They're getting food, and we're making sure they're okay. And they got all the Zoom capabilities to Zoom into their classes. And even with some of the cases that we've had, some of those folks have recovered and they have come out of quarantine and they're back in classes and in classrooms. So we feel very good about the fact that we've got a small number. And I think, too, the idea that our protocols are working, that we really feel like that we are able to get these ahead of time. And we have had no serious cases. As well as we are following the protocols in terms of contact tracing, contacting all the respective parties that need to be contacted, and they are taking the precautionary measures of either self-isolation or quarantine, and we'll be testing them and following the protocols accordingly. So we're very confident about how this is working, and so we feel good moving forward. As everybody continues to follow the directions and the protocols, we're going to be able to keep that to a minimum. I mean, we hate that students and even some faculty or staff have contracted the disease. We are, or the virus. But we are grateful that they aren't serious.
That's right.
We're grateful that they're recovering, and we're grateful that the protocols are working.
And in particular, I think a student, some of the questions have come in, well, we're not testing everyone, Dr. Walker, but that's because the state of Tennessee and the CDC have not said you must test everyone, right? That's why we're following that process. Yeah,
Phil, that's a great question, a great point. Early on, again, when I say early on, back in the latter part of the spring and summer when we were all virtual only and we were looking, how do we open up?
10 years ago, right? It feels like that long ago, right?
It feels like 10 years ago, it does. Back at the 1918 pandemic. Anyway, we are obviously looking at that and seriously considering, do we need to pretest everyone, right, staff, faculty, students, before they come in. And then the CDC in Tennessee, as you mentioned, Health Department, recommended that institutions not pretest. And I believe the primary reason, as we understand it, is that if someone is pretested, if the virus is early on, right, it's going to not catch it, and you'll get almost what you might call a false positive or a false negative. It's negative, but you actually have the virus, but it just hasn't manifested itself early on. So you could go through all the pre-testing, and people still come on, and within a couple of days, they actually do have the virus. And I believe the CDC also indicated that there's really no evidence that pre-testing someone necessarily reduces the potential of the transmission of the virus to someone else any more than the social distancing, the wearing of masks, the washing of hands, and the disinfectant. So when we looked at that, and they basically were making a recommendation not to pre-test, then we made that decision as well. But once again, I believe the protocols we have in place, as the CDC indicates, has helped us really be able to minimize the cases.
Excellent. Well, as we mentioned about class and eating and doing all the chapel that we're doing in the cases, there may be students, and we think there are some students who may have trouble connecting perhaps with Zoom technology. And our provost, Debbie Murray, wants us to make sure we address that with our students. So what should students be doing? How should they approach if there are some technical difficulties with the Zoom process?
Yeah. Talk with your respective school, maybe talk with the dean, talk with the chair of your department, even with some of the faculty and student workers, fellow students, talk with them because they're pretty savvy, obviously, about all of that. But be persistent. Let me say this to you, and it is. I mean, it's different. And I encourage you, don't give up. You keep asking questions, go to your dean, go to your chair, and even contact the provost's office. They can connect you with somebody who can help you make sure you know exactly what you're supposed to do. Because I know some students, they've got classes that are Zoom only, and then they have classes that are hybrid in Zoom. And so, yeah, making that switch and going back and forth can be a challenge. But let me just say, students, keep asking questions, keep being persistent. The folks are there to help you. And let me just speak to this, too, concerning Zooming for commuters.
Right.
As I mentioned, some students have Zoom-only classes and some have hybrid, and some of our commuters are that way. So they're coming on campus to their in-person class, but then maybe the next class they have is Zoom-only, and trying to find a spot on campus to be able to Zoom in. And I know the schools have been working hard at developing Zoom rooms or Zoom spaces where commuters can go, and if they have a Zoom-only class, they can go to those spaces and they can get on their computers for class. So again, in your respective school where your major is, talk to your dean, talk to your chair, see where they've got these Zoom rooms created. And again, you can contact the provost office and just be patient with us, patience and flexibility as we're working these particular things out, but be persistent and keep trying to find out where those things are.
I think we might have just got a little hashtag there. We might get it trending, Zoom rooms, right? Hashtag Zoom rooms or Lee U Zoom rooms, whatever. Commuters, we want to serve you well, and our department chairs and academic leadership and deans are working with you on that. Dr. Walker, this has been a semester like none other that we've had, and our new students that have come in, and even our returning students, they may be navigating, making real connections. Lee's a wonderful place for outside the classroom. Lee's relationships are extraordinary, and this has been a challenge for our students. How are we approaching and how are we encouraging our students to be sure that they're connecting with one another and faculty and so forth for a part of the Lee family?
Yes, it is challenging for sure. And as you mentioned, even for returning students, it's interesting. The first day of class, I was in my class. I teach a class, and I'm standing there, and this student comes in. And he is masked up, from nose down. I can't. And this is a student I've had lunch with on a couple of different occasions. I've actually done maybe some coaching with him. But he comes walking in and he has the mask from here down, and his hair was different. And I'm looking like, I think I recognize, but I'm not sure. So as he's coming, I said, "Hey, welcome, what's your name?" And I could see him smiling, almost laughing behind his mask, right? His eyes, and he just pulled it down real brief. He said, "Dr. Walker." It's me. I said, "Oh my goodness." Yes. So the point of all that is, hey, people we know are having a hard time recognizing all masked up. And so if you're coming here in like an incoming freshman or maybe a new transfer student, and you're trying to make those connections, it certainly is more challenging. And we recognize that. And of course, with the social distancing issues, and we're not able to have a lot of the large gathering, connecting, meeting one another events. So we're along with you in this regard. we're working with you to try to figure this out ourselves. But some of the things that are happening, let me just say to students, really pay attention to what's happening in your dorms, on your hallways, talk to your RAs, talk to your RDs, because that's where a lot of the community events and activities and connections are happening. So stay very much connected to them. I think one of the great ways you might want to consider is becoming a part of our small group connection. I believe it kicked off last week.
Yes, sir.
I'd say we had over 500 students that gathered. I can't remember the location. Phil, you might remember. It's down in my notes somewhere, but I can't remember where they gathered. But talk to your RAs and your gateway classes.
Yes.
Talk to your gateway instructor. They will know that. Contact Pastor Rob, our campus pastor, about that. And let me just say this to students. And I've said this several times, and so I sound like I'm repeating myself, but I am. Be persistent. Don't give up easily. Keep pressing in, keep moving forward, keep making yourself available in these opportunities to connect. I think we tried to have an outdoor movie night. We had bad weather. They moved it inside. That limited the seating, that type of thing. But we're working very hard to create as many types of small group or smaller connecting events. And just, don't worry about if I go to this, I don't really know anybody. I get it. I get that feeling. I understand that awkwardness. Press through that anyway. Go to these events. Be willing to, I don't know, you're talking through a mask often, but be willing to even converse through that. Kind of get outside of your comfort zone a little bit. But we are putting things together, and just pay attention to all the different announcements that you can and start plugging in.
Excellent. One of the things I tell my gateway class is embrace the awkward. We got to fully embrace it, because this is more awkward than usual, and we're eager to serve you well in that regard. Dr. Walker, we've talked to our students, and you've talked to parents, but we do partner with parents on this.
That's right.
And so we are eager to send the message and let the parents know all that we're doing here at Lee to take care of their sons and daughters. You sent 2 children here to Lee.
Yep.
I have 2 children here at Lee. We've given our lives in that regard to the service in this way. And how important are the parents to us, and what message do we have to them today?
Parents, you're hugely important. In fact, I can be bold to say this because I was one, as you mentioned, had 2 kids here. You have one now. You parents can be the difference in how your student thrives at Lee. I want to say to you parents, first of all, thank you for entrusting your students, your child or children to us. We don't take that responsibility lightly. We recognize the responsibility we have is you are entrusting to us your loves and joys of your lives, and we recognize that, and we receive them in that regard. And I think next to you and next to God, I don't think anybody loves them more than we love them and care about them, because we see this as a sacred call to help develop these students in their calling and understanding how God has wired them and called them to make a difference in this earth for His kingdom. So thank you for entrusting your students to us. And it is a partnership, as Phil just said. We are partnering together. Now, we're not taking them to raise. We're not becoming their parent. We're going to help them in their transition of becoming more responsible, of taking on more of an adult role and growing up. And that's the role we see ourselves doing. So we partner with you in that. But I'm going to ask you to partner with us in this regard. Keep encouraging your student, your child. Keep helping them to persevere. It is different. And students coming in, new students especially, new transfers, it takes them a while. When there was no COVID-19 and everything was the way it was here at Lee in terms of our campus experience, it took a little while, even then, for students to feel comfortable and connect. Now, even more so. So parents, let me just say to you, be very, very careful to try to come in and rescue. Encourage, coach, but let your student maybe stumble a little bit. Let your student work his or her way through this. It's a wonderful way for them to develop. But understand and work with us All the things we have in place aren't perfect. We're making adjustments all along the way. And the first time your child encounters a chapel service or encounters one of the classes or encounters one of our community events that we talked about a moment ago and it doesn't quite click for them, don't rush in there and swoop them out of there and say, it's not going to work, it's terrible. No. Please, 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 please. Hang in there. It's not a sprint. I mentioned a moment ago, this is a marathon, and more than ever before, keep realizing and accepting the reality. Here's what we believe at Lee, and I believe, and I hope you believe this for your child. We believe your child is called by God and His grace to Lee University to be here at His will and His way. That's what we firmly believe. We don't believe there's an accident here at Lee. We believe there's a God intention for every student that has come here. And I hope you share that with us. So let God do His work. Let us do our work with your child. And you continue to partner in encouraging and moving them forward and helping them to stay the course. And I believe you're going to see your child thrive like never before. That's our goal. That's our hope. That's why we're here.
Well, I'm ready for my kids, my parent, my two there. So I hope that they're hearing and listening to this because that's what we're committed to doing here at Lee as staff, faculty, but also as parents. Dr. Walker, thank you. Thank you for your leadership for doing this. Stay tuned with us. We're gonna do these pretty frequently and we'll keep you posted. But thanks again for being with us today. We hope you have a great week.